And live?
Live.
There it is. A bit higher, Mike, because no one can see it. That is Roman Emperor-esque. El Nero has entered the building. Morning, afternoon, evening, good night, good morning, wherever we are. Welcome to, I believe, 101 Bob today. Is that correct, Mike?
That is correct.
101 Bobs, all things Bob. I'm not starting off with a bob because if that hits her shoulders, technically I'm dealing with one length hair. Ooh, controversial. Let's have a talk about that. So, welcome once again to Unite HQ, another Unite Live. Nice to be back in front of the camera for a rare appearance before departing off to the weeks that are known as Fashion Week. We'll talk about that in the process. But I've been asked to do a 101 on all things Bob. So what I thought I would show today is multiple approaches to doing that, the what, whys and hows, and also it will highlight maybe how I've been shown so many different things through my career. But, and here's the big but, there is fundamental technique in all of that is consistent. So, you know, one's never a size of one size fits all, but there has to be some consistency in the fundamentals to create what I still consider one of the hardest haircuts to do really, really well. To do that well, things to be aware of, body position, elbows up, level, all those little things that we always talk about in haircuts. So not getting lazy. One thing you can see through here, nice clean partings make a big statement of your intent when you're doing haircuts. So that's a great thing. Any new hairdressers, getting into that, section. Not just about hair cutting, it implies to everything we do. I just had some students here last week doing runway ready, and it was one thing I was banging into them to perfect their work, especially when we're doing really clean, polished, precise work, clean sections. As per usual, any questions are all welcome, even comments, doesn't matter what you want to discuss, doesn't even have to be about a bob. Mike will throw them at me willy-nilly in the middle of when I'm talking about my most interesting bit. He will cut me short and give me a snippet of his undoubted wisdom. So without further ado, anything coming down?
Interrupt you.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Well, what? Let's any comments in there so far yet? No, nothing. We're just laughing between ourselves. Okay, let's start with basic approach, doing a bob. And I'm going to start in the back of the head. And what I'm going to do, I've pre-sectioned off some of the front because I want to divide the mannequin into quadrants. So by that, quadrant being the number 4, let's have a look at where we are. The head is placed forward. Remember that position, ladies and gentlemen. Get that neck down to start that off because that will stretch that neck, the muscles through here, flatten it out. So my first written rule on any haircuts, if you can cut on skin, cut on skin. If you can't, the next best thing. Okay, the closest you can get to nullify any potential graduation, etc., etc.
Paget says hello.
Padge, nice to see Padge last night. Padge came out and made a rare appearance. We had a very successful evening at the Shelter the Soldier Gala. Unite, I'm just going to say Unite killed it as far as what was contributed towards Shelter the Soldier. So if you don't know anything about Shelter the Soldier, it is one of our charities that we support, all with doggy poo, shampoo and conditioner. It's a fantastic organisation. It's heart-wrenching as well, you know, the stories again. So it's all the money goes towards veterans in need of PTSD, recuperation, all the rest of it, and they're given a service dog for that and the training that involves. So anyway, without further ado, let's get into the first section. So a forward diagonal, how deep is that, we ask ourselves? Well, I'm going no more than about 1/4 of an inch. Okay, very simple. That is going to be my initial guide at the base of the head. So lengthwise, you're obviously going to predetermine that. You're also going to make sure you've gone round and assessed the hairline for any jumps, any little pieces that are going to be problematic for you as well, to take those into account. By that I mean, say if you had a really nasty jump through here, the hair was kicking into the middle, well then you certainly wouldn't want to pull the hair down super tight unless you are going to literally blow dry this hair, you poker straight every day and use a flat iron, because that will give you problems. So you can go into what we call no tension haircuts, just using the comb, and that will allow you to cut on the neck as well. So as I said before, cutting on skin is preferable. Okay, and I would keep that consistent. If my hand position is always coming over, I am going to stay consistent with that. I'm not going to flip it around and go the other way, because that will change pieces in the haircut. On this, I'm going to start, because it's a mannequin, I want to start on that no tension piece. So I'm just going to look for optimal camera angle. Maybe it might be better if I'm that side. Is that better, Mike?
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah. And so I'm using the small part of the comb through here, small teeth of the comb, and that my unwritten rule for that would always be small teeth up to level with the ear, and then you start using the wide teeth above that, and I'll explain to you why we do that when we move further along. So I want to make sure I'm cutting a really, really nice length of bob. And by what I mean, I want it to impact at least the jawline. Okay. Myself personally, I love bobs when they are cut up close in between the ear and the jaw. I think they look the most classic modern version. And when I say modern version, I'm talking about 1920s onwards. And let's talk a little bit about the history of a bob. Maybe I'll throw the question out there first. Maybe I'll do a little prize. Anyone can tell me where the bob originated. There we go. I'm only going to give you a couple of minutes, because otherwise everyone's going to be disappearing off to their old books. So 2 minutes. Where did the bob originate? That's going to see if anyone's actually listening, won't it? So I do no tension. And just like cutting with my fingers, I won't go all the way to the end. I will move my body position so it's in front of me. And then I can rectify that. Now I will check that once more. Now we know if I comb that flat onto the neck, there would be the smallest piece of graduation. Well, there's no give on that mannequin head, but really, really, really nice, small amount, and that will be my initial guide. To follow that, once again, a forward diagonal, and that's going to take me to the bottom of the ear. And there's a reason why I'm doing that as well. Very, very clear. There's a really nice technique that Dow, the originator of Unite, obviously, as CEO, has got when he only does half the side. I've loved that ever since I've seen it. So I've incorporated that on haircuts. So once again, as you can see, I've gathered the hair. See how natural fall, coming straight down, nice and clean. The brain's not fighting with other pieces of the head. No tension. And stay consistent. I will move according. I'm going to stay out of the way of the camera, but I will move accordingly over that way. And what that is giving me, with no tension, is that it's allowing that head to spring a little bit as well. And third section, we were below the ear. I'm going to cut the ear in half. Still working on a forward diagonal. But as you can see through here, the angle is getting slightly less from the original. So forward diagonal, but you can see through here. And that's the curvature that is working around the head. Okay, still working on the small teeth of the comb. Working in small increments, working from the middle to out. And I'm not going to finish going all the way across. Hopefully that's not coming out nice and clean, Mike.
Looks great.
And as you can see through here, it's just like nice, clean and methodical. It's surprising how difficult that is to actually work that clean and methodical. It's taken me 300 years to get that far. But when I was asked to do this, I thought, wow, there's so much information I can go back into that subconscious and find over many, many years of cutting hair. And I've gone back to probably appreciating this way more than doing any other haircut. is because I still think it is like really super challenging, and your fundamentals have got to be spot on. If you don't do your fundamentals well, everything else will fall apart. You can always cheat, but get those correct. They always look really easily when they're done well. Now, there's a reason I'm doing something that I will address in a second. So I'm making sure natural fall, where I'm cutting the hair, I've probably gone literally 0.5 of a millimetre, slightly longer on that section than the previous, and that allows the hair to bevel and sit really nicely into the head, nice and tight. I'm going to have to move a touch through here. And what you're looking for, we do the forward diagonal for the simple reason, when the head elevates up, that will then drop the hair into a perfect line, okay? If you don't have that, you're suddenly going to find, if you're working square, that hair's going to rise and you're going to end up slightly shorter there in the front. I'm sure there's a few of you who experience that, so working on that forward diagonal, always extremely helpful. Anything yet, Mike?
Nobody knows it.
Nobody knows it. Anyone said hello? That would be a. At least we know someone's watching.
Badger's on.
Right, I'm going to give you the information anyway. So the bob haircut was made extremely popular by Irene Castle, who's a dancer. 1915, she was recovering from an illness or surgery, and she had her hair cut and decided to keep it, and she came out with this really cool, beautiful little bob that we see in the 1920s, the flapper girl era. So you've got to think about 1915, we're not even into the 20s, so she started then. It was like all trends, like you see today, it's taken that long to get through. Now there is other people that are credited to with it. I mean, the jazz singer Josephine Baker was another one that went for this real great strong haircut. And also the person who started cutting it was accredited in some circles to a guy, Alexander de Paris, but he wasn't actually from Paris. I believe he was from Czechoslovakia, Poland, somewhere like that. But he was working either in Paris or travelled into the US at some point. He was given some accreditation towards that. And that was when it was repopularised. Personally, if you go back in history, go back to the Egyptians or whatever, you can see this shape in the hair. So it doesn't necessarily originate from the 20s, but that is when what we call the modern bob started. It wasn't by Sassoon in the 50s, 60s. He just rejuvenated it all. Then we go into the era of like the Julie Christie iconic image in the film Shampoo. If you haven't seen that, watch it. Where Maureen Beatty cuts her hair off in the bathroom. It's one of the #1 reasons I became a hairdresser. It's iconic. So, blabbering. So hopefully give you that just a little background on where the bob originated and the look of it. And the 20s bobs were nice and short. They were at least jawline, almost sometimes coming right up to the ear level. Phenomenal looking haircut, and they still look great to this day. Have a look at any little kids in the Depression era, like the early 30s. They've all got these wonderful little bobs. They all look fantastic, super stylish. Now, the wonderful thing about that was there was uproar about all these women having their hair cut off. It was even banned in some places in the States. Can you believe that, ladies and gentlemen? They banned it in America. Well, it seems like we're going back to those times again, haven't we? Getting banned for everything. So, controversial, I know, but it does seem crazy. You're banned for having certain haircut, rebellious, having all that taking an anti-feminine stance, etc. And yet it's become now one of the most iconic feminine haircuts you can have. You know, things like called French bob, etc. Blah, 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 blah. So, that was when it was really popularised and it became known to what we have today. And then we've got all the many permutations of it that hopefully we're going to touch on while I'm cutting this today. Now, I've carried on forward diagonal section. Now the beauty of that, we've done 1, 2, 3, my 4th section through here, 4 sections in, as you can quite clearly see through here, forward diagonal. That's given me the opportunity to now expose that length of the haircut to the client. Really important. I'll explain why in a second. So let me just finish doing that. And as you can see, while I'm doing it, I've been raising the head very slightly in increments as I've been working up the head. Okay, really important. So you start with the hair at its most optimum further forward. So the nosy client, keep the head down. The one who's interested in her phone, she's going to love this haircut because her head's going to be down there looking at her phone the whole time. You're going to have problems getting her head up. So the one that wants to talk to you as well, keep pushing the head forward. We know all those permutations as hairdressers. So I'm using 7 seconds as a cutting fluid. Wonderful. Works in all manner of situations, that stuff, but it's great cutting fluid. Preps the hair, strengthens it, moisturizes it. Why aren't you using it? That is the big question. So assessing the hair, seeing how the spring is, etc. And I like the little tiniest bit. I mean, what 7 seconds is weightless, but it's got a viscosity that's different to water. I just love what it does, especially when you're working on coarse hair, be it like a mannequin. So I've carried on working on natural fall, working on the head, arms up. I'm making sure I'm at the right level, so I'm not cutting hair from above this, because guess what would happen? All right, so I see this a lot. If you're cutting in your fingers at this point, what would happen if you're above it? You start scooping the hair. And what I mean by a scoop, I'll flip it around this way. You comb the hair down and you scoop it slightly to cut it, and then you cut it. Well, your line's going to be completely off, and it's also you're creating graduation in that piece. So keep assessing that line. As you can see through here, it sits in beautifully into the neck. And that's another little tip for you. I always think, have a look of where that neck gives you that opportunity to sit into it. Really nice. You can know where the neck just curves in a little bit. If you can get it to sit in there, that is where it's going to look at its best. Because once that neck starts curving out a little bit, it's going to start throwing your line off. Excuse me. I haven't talked this much. Well, since I was at school, probably. That was a long time ago. Any comments yet, Mike?
You've got a hello from Maria Hairstylist, White Room.
Hello, Maria. Glad you could join us. We're talking all things bob. So we're doing at the very moment just I'm calling it basic, but we are doing just your initial guideline, working through that. And then I want to work on that problem area. So we're working on a no tension haircut. As you can see through here, I'm cutting through the comb. This is going to be the last section I take with the small teeth. And I'm going to raise that head slightly more. Now, mannequins, thankfully, don't have great big ears. So, we're not working on Dumbo here. But when you get to cutting on the ears, you want to at least press top and bottom, or top and middle, just to make sure you've got some give on that hair, because it will influence the line when you cut it. I haven't got the head all the way up to completely vertical. It's got a slight deviation on it. Same principle. I am mirroring that guideline with my comb, arm position, etc. No tension. It needs some moisture on that front piece where it's dried out and the kink is affecting it. So we've looked at the most problematic area for people, especially when you're new to the career and you start cutting bobs. The ears and the front is where you generally get your problems. And now we've addressed that. So hopefully we have established a really, really nice line working from the back to the front, okay? Now, because we're off forward diagonal, what you're going to do is that hair will then quite happily sit sort of working through into that area. Once we've got above that, now we mirror this both sides, but I would make sure once I've got to this side, be it the left or right, the client sees it and is happy then with the length we are going for. Now I was going to touch on this earlier. We get there as soon as we can, because if we didn't bring the sides in really quickly and we've done all of the back, so for argument's sake we're going to do a bit of graduation, you're working on a little graduated bob, you've done all the back, then you start bringing the sides in last, the client says, you know what, I'd like it a little bit shorter, God forbid they ever say I want it a bit longer, but if they want it a little bit shorter, you've got to go back all the way back to the beginning and recorrect your haircut again, working on your graduation, because your line is too long. So by getting into this front section super quick, we've then disclosed the finish line to the client. Then any corrections, 4 steps to go back, much faster. The last thing you want working behind the chair is to do a whole haircut and you've wasted 20-25 minutes of your appointment time and you've got to go back and recut it. So much you want to have that time to put in what I call like 90% of your haircut, 85-90%, and then you can go through, style it, and then you can really refine it, because there's no way this is the finished article when you're just cutting it wet. We are putting in the great foundational stone. There is going to be little permutations, little deviations to fix on that when you finish drying it. And drying it is going to be one of the important subjects as well. How you dry it effectively to create a great finish, really important. Once again, working over the ear. Any questions, Mike?
Nope. Everyone's just in awe.
Oh, they're going to give it an or ah. So there's my baseline, okay? That is one approach that we've got. I would continue all the way through, working both sides, dry it off, then I would work on refining that finish. Now then, let's put in a little bit of graduation into this, okay? Working on that same piece. And let's blow a few myths out of the water on that one. What is graduation, first off? Well, graduation is the build-up of weight, okay? So, argument's sake, you want to create a nice bit of weight on the hair, because the hair might be fine, or you just want to improve the shape of it. So just like this, we might have looked at it and thought, you know what, I've cut the one length, but I could really deal with some graduation. So I could go back and start my graduation. So my first section is once again a forward diagonal, but look at the angle that has taken now in comparison to what we were before. Before we were working from interior profile section to the exterior hairline. Now it's much more of a diagonal vertical angle on that. I'm never going to quote 45 degrees or anything like that, such like that. I haven't got a mathematical protractor that is going to give me that one. So what I want to show now is the angle of my fingers in relation to that section now. Now, this is often quoted as 45, okay? It's a great approximation, but is that 45 degrees to that part of the head or that part of the head? Massive difference, okay? So we can't mathematically be correct about that. It's given as a good idea that it gives you a great picture in your head of what that would look like. 90 being completely through here, so you always think, oh, about half of that is 45 degrees. But because the head is on a curvature, 45 degrees from here and 45 degrees from here would look very, very different. So there you go. Matter of personal opinion, that one. So I've come back to center and I will see how I'm locked in through here, elbow, side, and I'm going palm, as you say, palm to palm through here with my scissors. Okay, become very, very simple. And for the next section, slightly higher and working out. Once again, the diagonal section's coming back, working nicely and clean. Your elevation starts to increase. And as you can see, the angle changes. That will change how I pick the hair up and elevate it. So it is always going to be marrying that one. There is no over direction through here, as you can see through here. I'm only working on the size of section that I can handle accordingly. So I'm coming from fingertip into middle knuckle. And it's not impacting that baseline. And by that time, you already will start seeing the build-up of weight, the haircut starting to pop into here, and the tiniest of weight lines just starting to develop. So I think it's a nice way of approaching the graduation from what I call like the beginner's level, putting your baseline into it, and then making sure you've then got a reference point of one, where your graduation is going to be starting from the interior of the head and working out to your baseline. It will just make sure then you're not cutting into it. You know, once again, it's a little approach that someone showed me a long time ago. I quite like that when I was first cutting hair, because you don't want to be cutting into your baseline too much. As you've got more experience, you can approach it by literally going straight into the graduation, because you know exactly where that is going to be in relation to your finish line. You won't have any problem with it whatsoever. More than one way of skinning a cat. As you can see through here, I am now, elbows are up, I am increasing the elevation. And as you can see, like everything else, it is just nice, clean, methodical, just like we were talking about at the beginning. Okay. So by the time I get to top of the ear, we should start to see the development of, I'll move it down slightly. Another little thing I've got for you, giving yourself enough space in your haircut. Very, very important. I'm not working on top of the haircut, I'm not here. I'm not uncomfortable, I've got enough space between me, etc. I can pick the hair up. I know something I've always sort of like talked about myself, be it in styling or cutting hair. I can present the hair to myself, you know, really adequately. I can see where my guideline is. That's always the biggest problem. People start cutting hair when they're in the industry. Everything looks so hard. Palming the comb.
Safi Burton says, love a good bob.
Who doesn't? Who doesn't? What hairdresser doesn't love a good one? And as you can see, my line has been consistent. It's worked from the middle, and it's just coming straight the way down to that baseline, nothing more than that. So I'm finishing right on the section just behind the ear. That is where I've determined my graduation will finish. If you're going beyond the ear, you're generally impacting that line too much. Nothing wrong with that, because sometimes some hair might require that, but generally as an unwritten rule, you want to finish just literally just behind the ear.
You're 30 minutes in, Gary.
Wow, we're only just starting to have fun. So as you can see through here, the elevation, look at the elevation through here. You can see through that. What happens the more I elevate? Well, the stronger the graduation is, the more weight I take out of it. But if I started over graduating this beyond the occipital bone, I then start making that a much softer graduation line. The more I elevate this and pick it up, the softer that line is going to become. But I'm going to show you another way of eradicating that as well. As you can see through here. Now I see a lot of mistakes, especially online. The hair's being dragged back this way, over direction. Well, the hair doesn't live there, it lives down here. So your line's going to be changed dramatically because of that. Nothing wrong with that, it just depends on the look you want. If you want something a little bit more classic, see through here, look, it's perpendicular to the section. I'm finishing at just behind the ear, as we said. And we should then elevate the head up. I should be able to see a nice graduated weight line working from centre of the head out to the perimeter. And as you can see through there, there's the shape of it. And also, I am not going above the occipital bone. So that would allow me then to even scissor over comb maybe that hairline if I so wished, all looking in proportion to whatever you're cutting. Now, does everyone want to have a graduated bob? Just because it's fashionable. What happens if you've got hair that is like super thick, super dense, but they want the same look? Well, there's an easy way of creating the same optical illusion, but without doing the same haircut. You can put in a minimal amount of graduation, but let's do some rounded graduation. So there's your weight line, okay? That's my weight line. if I'd continue this all the way up to the top of the head, you elevate that out. As you can see, I'm 90 degrees from there, and I would take out that corner, okay? Doing exactly the same as we've done. So I'm taking a vertical section, I'm extending this back to the middle because it's not the same as doing it on the horizontal. Forward diagonal, once again, those good fundamentals, stay consistent, clean section. I present the hair nicely in the hands, making sure everything is technically correct. And by doing that rounded grad, by the time I get to behind the ear, it should hardly be anything to come off. There's a little tiny snippet. That instantly starts softening that line that you have through. There's one final piece that you can do for the rounded grad, is that you're going to have that corner from the short bit on the top. It's right there, that little bit of point. So I'm coming out, working on the horizontal through here on my section, sorry, on the vertical, pulling the hair out directly from the head and putting in that as square. What will that do? Well, by taking off that corner, you then eradicate your weight line completely, but the haircut will hug the shape of the head. So we know, like, rounded layers follow the hairline, so you will have the beautiful appearance on really thick hair of someone could look at it and think, oh, that is graduated. It's going to look seamless. And the beauty of that, and what I've loved about doing that technique for so long, that allows me to either texturize the hair afterwards to create something that's really choppy and it will have loads of movement, but can be also blow dried extremely softly and dead straight as well. Now, that's gone through potentially some of the approaches. I know I want to give you something completely different on this side. Same haircut, but we're going to use a razor, and it will be probably look just a little bit faster, but the approach is going to be the same. Doesn't matter, it's a razor in my hands. Any questions yet, Mike?
You've got a comment, I love this content, you can never stop learning, from herspecial.ty.
Thank you very much. Well, as I say, been at this business for 42 years, and it's just nice. I talked to someone last night, actually. I said it's just nice to give everything back. You know, we're no one is born being able to cut hair perfectly straight away. We're all results of people that have come before us. And sometimes when you're asked to do things like that, you have to go back into your memory bank and just bring out all those things that you've learned, and you can't replace that. You know, time doesn't allow you to replace that. So it's just all those little snippets that you can create technically, you know, good haircuts that will last over a period of time, and then you can take them into you know, things that are like what I call you know, real creative environments then with the actual how you're working. So now let's look at working with a razor. I'm using this, my slider is my favourite, as people know. So now I'm going to put tension on that. I need tension when I'm working the razor. Okay, and I'm going to work through here.
I'm going to come around.
Sorry, I'll move it.
Just over your shoulder.
Okay, so the tension is here, and this is going to create, now this is being influenced by my hand action, okay, because I am moving it up and down like that. I'm actually creating a softer line that is almost like point cut. That will be the equivalent of like point cutting with scissors. I'm going to take a nice generous section through here. Now I can continue working at one finger's depth, working through here. Following exactly the same principle, forward diagonal, but what if I work on the horizontal and then start putting in some graduation as well? Okay, now I've got the option of, as I said before, building that up the graduation, the technique of the razor stayed consistent. Now that can vary slightly in that I can continue using the razor in that fashion. So my guideline is behind my finger through here, so you've always got to be conscious of that. You're always moving the hair, don't stay still. Or I can make it into a much more of a, I call a gentler approach by literally just sliding the razor through. Okay, you slide that out to infinity, so you're always got almost like the last piece is always going to be left for what I call just in case. Okay, it's going to build up your graduation accordingly. Elevating out exactly the same, and we slide it through. Once I get to the ear, I'm working on natural fall, slide through. Now the beauty of working short to long, the hair is going to be promoting it to work that way. It will do it. The short hair will push long hair, and as you can see through here, it instantly wants to kick that in. I can obviously go up through the hairline afterwards, cut that in if I so wish with a pair of scissors just to refine it. But the more tension I put on this, the smaller sections, I can still do a really, really nice precise line. So hopefully you found that little bit interesting. I love using this. It's great on hair that's got extensions, wigs, etc. It's a really important tool for that. And also, you know, the French bobs that have all this lovely sort of like movement and kicks, it's a great tool to master. So once again, you know, it's not one size fits all. Some are purists will be like, I'll only use scissors to do it. Absolutely fine. I love that approach as well. I just think it's a nice thing to have in your armoury. If you come and join us at Fashion Week, you might have to approach a wig like that because you've only got 10-15 minutes to do it, so you can create that illusion of a perfectly done bob in that time because they're walking along the runway. Now, there is another approach I really like, especially if you're doing...
Hello here from Salzburg, Austria.
Salzburg, Austria. How are you? You must be coming to New York, if I remember rightly. I think I know who that will be.
The handle is Hair by Sylvia.
Yes, I know. Right. So a reverse diagonal is the next approach. The final one of today, it sounds like it's going to be. Little word on the next live. I was told I'm not allowed to look over there, so I'm deliberately going to look over there because Mike was taking the mickey. You reckon I couldn't see that far away. So I'm going to look right here, and it'll be the next live. It's actually a bridal hair tips. Okay, so any of those who are thinking about getting married, Ali's going to be doing that. It's October the 7th at 10 AM. Okay, I'm off for a month. I'm skiving away again. As you know, it's September, Fashion Week start. We are hitting New York, we're hitting London, we're doing all of them. You know, we're going to end up in Paris. Got some great shows lined up, and yeah, meeting all the crew, new faces, etc. So let's go back to where we were.
Sylvia's confirmed she will be coming to New York Fashion Week.
Fantastic. See you in New York, Sylvia. You must have been at the class. You're at the class that I took in Germany back in June, end of June. So we now have reverse diagonal coming back through here. The head's up square. No tension yet again. So if this was shorter, I'm going to take an option, say, from just below the mouth, elbows up. And you work back accordingly, just like you would do in the back of the head. Consequently, you can see the angle is going to soften as well as I move up the head. This is a short one, but I think sometimes when you're doing a short bob, using a reference in the front of the head where it's going to finish is much more advantageous than starting in the back, because chances are you will never get this short enough starting in the back. A bit more moisture on that, take that kick out of it.
Got a comment here, how exciting, it must be super busy these times of fashion.
From
Herspecial.ty.
herspecial.ty. Okay. Yes, it's hectic. You're always questioning your sanity when you're doing it, but would we rather not do it? Absolutely not. We love it. It's one of the, it's just a great thing taking all these stylists there that return, some that would never have had the opportunity to go. It's a truly international experience, and if you love styling hair, I think it's a win-win. You will get pushed into areas you never thought were possible, working behind a chair. The pressure, it makes you a better stylist. It makes you a really strong stylist because, one, working under that pressure, and also the approaches. But what I like the most is the fact that you become so comfortable with using so much product in a certain way that it will never bother you working behind the chair. You will look at it completely differently. It certainly made me a better hairdresser, that's what I think. So switching over now to the wide tooth comb. A bit of colour coordination there today, Mike. Look at that. Minty green for the win. And as we do, we've worked up the head. We're working to a middle parting, as you say, like just pivoting up, just like a clock. By the time I get to that top, I'm working on still a no tension haircut. Same principles apply, the ear, elbows up. And the comb almost acts like a really nice spirit level. And that is how I would attack doing a really nice short bob, because by the time I get back to the hairline, it's impacted into that hairline. It's going to give me then options of how I do that. So let's have a look at that little problematic area of how I would deal with that, because a lot of people struggle with that. Right, you may wish to go straight in and just blunt that off, okay? There's nothing wrong with that. You can take all the hairline away and do that. You may wish to do some graduation. Well, the graduation on that is relatively simple. Bringing that down, following the hairline, working from one finger's depth on the head. So we're working as close as we can, and literally we're going to work on a diagonal through here. That was my first section through here. I would then comb the hair flat to the head, so I'm not cutting into the hairline. My next section, and I prefer to work on very, very fine sections when I'm doing this. Your elevation starts, but exactly the same. Okay, so by the time I get back to the middle, my elevation's changed to square, and you will then have a consistent weight line running all the way through the back, and then you can just tidy up that hairline with your little bit of graduation. Well, guess what? If the hair was that thick, like this mannequin head is, how would I cure that? Well, I would go back to doing the rounded graduation, take the point off, do a square layer. Now, if I did a square layer all the way through the sides, this I'm going to give you a little intro. Watch how we do the choppy bob on Unite Hair TV. That will show you how to do a beautiful square layer all the way through. That runs exactly on the impact position of the fringe where that finishes. Okay, it's not shorter than the fringe. Or I mean here, if the fringe finishes here, the layering would finish through here. Okay, it's not shorter, longer, etc. Really, really great approach. And that way we get a really, really nice classic bob sitting in there. So we've had fundamental technique on creating your guideline in the back, graduation on a couple of approaches. We've done razor cutting using traditional sort of like attacking with like that technique. Well, I don't know what I would call that really, because the slide is the other one that creates a much more of a softness. So you're only ever cutting the perimeter. I'm not going in there and removing weight. Very important to understand that. Come back on other different future episodes on Unite Hair TV. You can see that one. Hopefully that was really useful. We looked at actually where the haircut originated from. I want to touch on blow drying. So when we're doing blow drying bobs, my go-to is always going to be the Denman style brush, and that is because this will really get the hair really nice and flat and hugging the head. So I would start off with a wrapping technique. Product wise, smooth and shine, blow dry cream, anything like that. You know, even some silky smooth, you know, just to make sure everything sort of sits down. And we literally just wrap the hair around, so wrap drying is going left to right, and using this in the palm like this, you take the sections and you literally lift, okay, that grips the hair, you've got tension in it, and it will literally just pull it down, and that will make sure you have got a really nice smooth bob. Very important to do that in the hairline if you've got some length. If you come into it with a round brush, if you're a round brush aficionado, if you do too much lifting with that, with a round brush, well then you're going to elevate the hair too much. You're either going to put in some what I call false graduation or false body. Ideally you're in a hairline when it's this short, come in, do your Denman first, even a comb, wrap it left to right, look at any sort of problematic areas in the hairline, put a little bit of product in there, laser straight is great for that, wrap dry that, come back in. There is no problem using one of these further up the top of the head, it's just the technique will change. Okay, if I'm using this with a dryer, I am not going to lift this up and bevel it. Nothing wrong with that if I want a big bouncy blow dry, but if I want it to be smooth, then just make sure you just drag the hair down on the root base, and instead of twisting it, because that is going to make the hair kick under, just drag the hair through. And then what I do in my wrist position, I just change my wrist position slightly, stuck it literally like that, and that just makes sure that hair stays straight at the very end. Okay, that's just something I picked up over years. Now, there is one little difference here. If you wanted to create hair with a lot of volume, if you had a certain client that needed lots of volume on the hair, so we're going back to bobs of like the 60s that had lots of volume, etc. One thing that used to stand out from the guys I first learnt with that used to work in that era, they always used to cut the hair, and the length of the hair used to literally ride a quarter of an inch, eighth of an inch longer than the hairline. And I always ask, why is that? It's like the same as us using the wide tooth comb as we go up. Well, generally, because the crown always has a jump, it's got longer to travel from here to here, and sometimes the hair was set. And what that does is the hair will spring. Well, if you want that to sit accordingly on the one length hair, if this bit is slightly longer, guess what? It tucks that hair in. If this bit is a lot shorter, the hair is always going to kick the reverse. So if your bob is kicking out, check your graduation, make sure the head's been put forward. If it's not kicking under like we were saying, if it doesn't bevel in nicely, you're going to have weight issues there. So that's to counteract that. Hopefully you found that interesting. I've got nothing more to give.
You've got a question here.
Go on.
With your experience when you're not educating, what's the time frame on finishing and styling a bob?
Ooh, in a chair in a salon, well, you're normally working on an hour appointment and you're going to use all of that. Every hair type's going to be different. If I had to do it, you know, ideally, if I was back in a salon environment now, I'd book myself out an extra 10, 15 minutes if I could, if I knew the client's hair type. You know, because they are just that time consuming. You know, the Sassoon method of cutting hair and putting a mirror under here to check any of that weight line after you've blow dried it out. You know, flipping the hair that way, seeing how the hair falls. You know, how much time have you got? And I think if you're doing all that, then you've got to just charge accordingly, all right? So if you are going to be that much of a perfectionist, then I think you should charge that way, because that is how much time and care you're putting into it. Because the people are paying for your expertise, not necessarily, you know, just your time. You might be quicker because you've done it for 25 years, but it's taken you those 25 years to become that quick. So hopefully that's answered that one. Yeah?
Yeah, that's great.
All right. So hopefully see you next time. Ali will see you next time on October the 7th. And I will see you probably from New York, because I dare say we will go live in New York at some point. Yeah, a couple of times. We'll do one from the class that's going on, Runway Ready in the class, or definitely backstage. Follow us all on there, on Unite Hair TV, on all the stories, etc. Feel free to sort of like follow the journey when we start in New York and disappear around Europe, doing all the shows. Hopefully you enjoy the content. Most of you normally do, and comment on there. And if you haven't tried it and you want to, there's still time. There's always that odd one space that's in there. So go to Unite Hair, or the class requests at unitehair.com. Class requests at unitehair.com. Sign up before it's too late and you've got the worst FOMO of 2024. See you next time.